everybody. Up bright and early this morning to run around the lake because after this I've got to take the kids to school and then I'm heading into London for a couple of meetings. But I'm also recording a special podcast today with the guys from The Race. You may have seen them, a new publication in town. And this podcast is going to be about possibly the worst car that I ever worked on that I didn't really work on. So just got off the train having travelled into London, and on the journey I've had a series of emails, you'll have all seen them by now, statements from every non-Ferrari powered team basically expressing their disgust and their shock at that statement by the FIA on Friday night. No major surprise that they're all in such disarray and disbelief at what the FIA have done and how they've done it. Perhaps the biggest surprise of all is that we managed to get 7 Formula 1 teams to agree on the wording of a statement together. When was the last time that many teams agreed on anything? The thing for me is that not only was the wording of that statement pretty ropey, as we discussed in that video the other day, but the way they released it, you know, in the last 10 minutes, knowing that the FIA had gone home, there was no way for any media to really get any comment on any of that at that stage. Everyone was packing up. It was literally the dying moments of pre-season testing. The fact that they released it in that way, I think, tells you a huge amount about the fact that the FIA knew they were on particularly dodgy ground with all of this. And where they've tried to bury the news, all they've actually done is make it an even bigger story than it might have anyway otherwise been. So really interesting to do the podcast today with the guys at The Race. I will of course let you know when that's going to be available, but the MP418, of course, I don't think I mentioned the car earlier, I'm sure most of you worked it out. Really interesting car, and there were so many stories on a kind of very public, obvious level around that car, the car that never raced, but there were so many other stories and so many other impacts, you know, that car had, and the stuff that went on around that car had on behind the scenes. So really nice to kind of dredge some of that up again, even if most of my memories of that particular car were incredibly painful ones. Right, let's pick up with that statement, joint statement from 7 Formula 1 teams. Not that surprising. In fact, you know, really unsurprising that they've come out fighting, that they're angry about this. Rightly so. We're all angry. If you saw my video from a couple of days ago, you know that I was angry. My response was an angry one to that. And I think that's a justified way to think about this. We have, in my opinion, been let down, even in the most basic level, by the communication coming out of the FIA. And that's way before you go to the lengths of, did Ferrari actually cheat? Did they actually do something wrong? Everything is hinting at least towards that. And it's certainly not hinting towards the FIA clearing Ferrari's name. So the teams that were affected by that, and that's pretty much every team, isn't it? Even Ferrari. Like I said the other day, if Ferrari did nothing wrong, why not come out and just say, look, they didn't do anything wrong. Clear their name. That hasn't happened, and yet we have, at this point, we haven't heard anything from Ferrari. So they might have an argument to say they should be upset about this. And even if they did do something wrong and have gone through the process with the FIA behind closed doors, the way it was all communicated is horrific. Nobody comes out of this looking good. And if you're one of the other 7 teams, and obviously it's no surprise that Sauber, Haas and Alfa Romeo were not on that list of 7 teams. Of course, they used the very technology that was under definite, incredible scrutiny last year. They are supplied by Ferrari. They're part of that Ferrari family. So no surprise in that regard. But now they are almost just, even if only by association, drawn into this whole furore. For the other teams, of course, again, I touched on it the other day, but there are so many different levels of impact. You know, Mercedes were fighting them for the championship. Red Bull were fighting them for a valuable second position in the championship. And that cascades all the way down to the teams who may have picked up points, valuable points that, of course, come with prize money if Ferrari were, in fact, competing on an illegal basis. So they have every right to know the outcome of this investigation. And what this joint communique has done is forced the FIA's hand. They now have to respond. to this in some way, and they will be desperately running around behind the scenes in Paris right now looking for ways to communicate this, looking for ways to respond to this. Now, I'm not sure that they will still ever give us the full explanation. I've been in Formula One long enough to know that any public statement, any press release is twisted by the teams, the governing body, Formula One themselves. It's twisted to show the details you want to show to the world. I mean, I'm well aware of that. That's normal. But they now have to respond to this. And that will be the next step. And that will determine what these 7 teams then go on to do. And don't forget, we're on the brink of a big Formula One season, an important Formula One season, where F1 itself, the people who invested, what, 6 billion quid or something into this sport, they must be looking on from their position thinking, what on earth is going on? What's going on? We're trying to build the hype, the interest for this amazing season, when it should all be talking around the competition, and yet you've got all the teams and the governing body, the rule makers, squabbling amongst themselves in public, throwing legal threats at each other. It's an unbelievable scenario. You can argue that from Formula One's perspective, publicity is publicity. The world's talking about Formula One. In my mind, it's for all of the wrong reasons right now. Right, these 2 munchkins collected, and now we're heading home. And then I've got to take the dogs for another walk. It's tipping it down.
Wait, no, do we have to go?
The joys of being a dog owner. Listen, the importance of what these 7 teams in Formula One have done today should not be underestimated, because it's really important, not just for those 7 teams, not just for you and I, because we all want to know and think we deserve to know the truth of what's happened between the FIA and Ferrari, but this is really important, probably just as much for the FIA as anybody else, because they are the governing body of our sport. And if they want to continue governing world motorsport, of which Formula One is perhaps the most high profile part of all of that, if they want to continue to govern that, they need to be, at the very least, seen to be a fair, transparent organisation and governing this sport in a fair and transparent way. I mean, it's been the mantra of Jean Todt for, God knows how long. We can all refer back to things like FIFA and the mess that FIFA got themselves in and are still in off the back of the Sepp Blatter controversies. Now, I'm not for one second suggesting these 2 incidents are the same thing. They're absolutely not. But the point is, the public perception might end up being the same thing. If the public and all the competitors involved in Formula One end up, even if it's just a perception, that they think the FIA are not ruling our sport in a fair and transparent manner, the whole thing collapses. So whilst I'm sure the FIA, when they saw that joint statement coming today, were reeling, were running around their offices probably panicking, wondering what to do next, the truth is that this could end up being, perhaps even, if they respond to it correctly, and that is a big if. That's what the world is waiting to see, what their next move is. But if they do it right, it could ironically be the one thing that ends up saving the FIA. Right, while you lot grab the popcorn and wait for this shit to unfold even further, I'm going to go home and get out of these wet things, get showered and changed, and then start putting this vlog together. I'm actually going out for dinner tonight, so I'm not sure at what point you might eventually end up getting to see it. Could be quite late in the day, depending on where you are. But anyway, if you've liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, why not? Get subscribed, hit that button. There's loads of this sort of nonsense that happens all year. We're talking about everything that happens across Formula One and other forms of motorsport too. And obviously, I really love your input into this. Got any questions, any topics you'd like me to cover, anything you'd like answered, just smash it into the comments section and I will do my very best. For now though, see you later.